following is a presentation of Jacob Sports.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let Jacob Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call Jacob Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the National High School Wrestling Show. I am your host, Henry Racich, and we will dive deep into the youth and high school wrestling world tonight, do a quick recap of what happened out in beautiful Altoona this weekend at the Triple and Double A state titles. And I am bringing on our first guest for this evening is Jeff Uveino, sports writer for the Erie Times. Jeff, thank you for joining the show tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Always love talking wrestling, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, Jeff and I sat next to each other. I'm going to say the first 4 hours before we actually started talking at that long press table out there. But man, Jeff, what an awesome weekend out there in Altoona.
I thought it was great. I really thought it was great. I don't know if you guys got the snow that we did in the eastern part of the state coming back Saturday night. That was not so great. But before that, I was really impressed by the facility. I'd never been in the school there at Altoona. I'd only been to Mansion Park, their football stadium, and just a really beautiful facility. There was plenty of room for everyone. I know that was maybe a concern, was will we have the room that we usually have at Giant Center, but I thought there was plenty of room. It seemed like everyone getting along well. And honestly,
for the most part, there was almost a couple little things happened, but yeah, for the most part, I agree.
The biggest thing that stood out to me was just the collective wrestling talent in that gym. It was astounding. I mean, we Faith Christian and Bishop McCourt go without saying, but when you got those guys wrestling on mats 1 and 2, and then I look over to my left and I see Keanu Dillard's wrestling, and then I look over to my right and I see Dalton Perry's wrestling, and it's just where can you get that aside from a PIAA tournament? And just the collective talent was so impressive, and it produced some great matchups, like you said, and some great matches. It was really a joy to watch.
So I agree 100%, Jeff. And for our viewers and listeners out there, tell me a little bit about the areas you cover. Like, what is your geographic responsibility working for the Erie Times?
Yeah, so I cover District 10, which is the northwestern portion of the state, as people can probably imagine from Erie. We include Erie, Crawford, Venango, Warren, and Mercer counties. So we go from the top of the state in the western half down about halfway to Pittsburgh. So some of our traditional powers are Reynolds, Hickory, Fort LaBeouf, General McLean, and Cathedral Prep, of course, which placed fourth at Team States this weekend, and which is why I was there following Cathedral Prep. And it was really kind of the stars aligned for Cathedral Prep this year. They brought back all 13 starters from a good group last year, and they had 4 freshmen who actually took 4 of those starting spots. And that coincided with Cathedral Prep dropping down from Class 3A for the first time ever. So now all of a sudden, in a year that was already super competitive in District 10, now we have Cathedral Prep coming down, which ended up being, a step ahead of Corey and Reynolds and McLean and some of our other good teams. But we got a lot of AA talent in this portion of the state. I guess that's what we're known for. The area, due to population trends, has trended even more toward AA in recent years. We're down to 4 AAA schools now: Harbor Creek, Erie High, McDowell, and Meadville, which of course was part of the realignment, how we now no longer have a Northwestern region for AAA, and our schools will wrestle with the WPIAL in that new Western region. But I'm Erie County primarily, but we do cover all of District 10. And we're looking forward to a pretty competitive D10 tournament in AA in a couple weeks, and what should be a really fun girls tournament this weekend in District 10 as well.
So let's talk a little bit about the weekend and the predicted top 4. stood true to the prediction of who was going to be in that final race. I kind of was nail biting a little bit. With full transparency here, I may have a little bias towards Faith because that's where my son goes. But man, that McDevitt match was a nail biter. It just seemed like those top four teams, there was not much separation between those teams in any way. I mean, each one has their stars, but man, everybody was scrapping up and down that lineup.
Yeah, I think we probably all expected the final to be Faith versus McCourt, but McDevitt's lineup was so impressive. And I don't know when the first time I said it. I don't know if it was November or December or whenever, but I told my boss, hey, like, just so you know, I'm anticipating Cathedral Prep is going to wrestle Bishop McDevitt for third and fourth estates. So like, let's be ready for that. And it ended up happening. You never know what's going to be out there in the state every year, but that ended up coming to fruition. And Prep, I know that they thought that second time around against McDevitt, because of course they lose, McDevitt beats Cathedral Prep in the quarterfinals. Right. Those, I forget the score, 39-23, something like that. But Cathedral Prep, they didn't wrestle their 145 pounder, Gabe Dorman, who he hurt his shoulder last week at team districts. Something happened in the final. They didn't wrestle him Friday, but the plan was if they get back and they need him, they're going to wrestle him on Saturday. And they did against Berks Catholic. And he ended up losing that 145-pound match against Berks, but he kept it close. And without him, that's probably 6 for Berks. And that really changes things. That duel ended up being 29-20 in favor of Cathedral Prep in the consolation semis. So I know that second time around, Cathedral Prep, they thought if they could flip either 14 or 20, or 21 or 27, which was, Grayson Music versus Cam Barrero, it did end up flipping that. And then, that was 27. And then 21 with Davion Edmond versus Liam Lawler. They thought if they could maybe flip those matches, get Dorman back in there, they could get it done. It didn't end up happening. Partially injury default. You can't anticipate that. But point being that McDevitt lineup, there's absolutely no breaks in it. And they, as we all saw, they gave Faith Christian a good run. They bumped some guys up. Baum, I believe, Camden Baum had a big win for them against Faith. And they made it interesting there for a while and really showed like, hey, there's more than 2 elite teams in Pennsylvania.
Listen, they wrestled with a chip on their shoulder that whole match. They were very scrappy, very physical, between the circle, outside the circle, whatever. They were not cowering down to the almighty Faith. They were coming for them.
They were. Yeah, they sure were. And they almost had the horses to do it too, right? It wasn't like this team that was performing way above its level. They're really that good. That lineup's really that good. It was interesting. It was interesting to see that kind of people start after those 2 upsets. I believe it was 45 and 52, somewhere in the middleweights. McDevitt won those back-to-back matches, and people kind of started looking around like, like what's going on here? Faith obviously put it away impressively, but there's some questions being asked there for a moment, and I'm not sure whether people anticipated that or not. But again, like we said, just speaks to the depth that's out there.
Jeff, were you? I don't know if you were next to me. I just heard this roar on the other side of the gym. Is that when Dom Deputy got pinned right this weekend?
I was not with you. Yeah, Deputy got stuck early in that match. Yeah, I'm trying to remember when that was. I was on the other mat. I was on Deputy was on the far mat, and I was in Cathedral Props wrestling on the close one. Yeah, that was one of the biggest pops of the weekend, and there were a few good ones. There were a few good pops, right? And I guess that's part of the benefit of the kind of the intimate setting, right? Just in a high school gym.
Yeah, at Hershey, that might happen, 100 yards away at the other side of the mat if we were at Hershey. But and I did hear he was pretty sick. I don't know if you heard that. That was
I did not know. They're a little out of my range, Chestnut Ridge, but yeah, those are things that a lot of times as fans and as observers and even as a journalist like myself, we can't know that, right? Like we don't know. There's so many factors at play, like a sickness and a lingering injury that we're not talking about. So, from our third, I do District 10 wrestling rankings. We all look at the rankings online. We all try our best to predict what's going to happen, but sometimes a kid wakes up and he's super sick, and what are you going to do? Or sometimes, whether he was sick or not, I think he got think he got headlocked if I remember right. So I mean, sometimes you just get hit in the headlock.
Anybody can get caught. It's like any given Sunday, any given Saturday. That's what I try to tell my son. He's a freshman wrestling at Faith. His first 10 matches of his high school career, everybody was ranked in the top 10. Iron Man, Escape the Rock, all these big tournaments. It's like, I feel bad. He's wrestling up, but it's like, there's your dues. You got to pay your dues, right? You want to wrestle with the big dogs. You got to, face whoever comes at you. But it's definitely that atmosphere, man. I don't know how many top 10 wrestlers in the country were in that gym. Double digits easy, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it was like you looked around and there were so many wrestlers who like you just knew who they were just by looking at them. I mean, you and I, we follow wrestling, high school wrestling pretty closely, but no matter how closely you follow it, like just recognizing a kid based on looking at them with high schoolers who are constantly cycling through that, that can be rare. Everyone when they see Bo Bassett walking and you say, or you always see Jax, there are a dozen of those kids.
Right.
How often does that happen? And let me real quick. You mentioned your son. All of his matches are so tough. Pennsylvania is just brutal. I grew up in Western New York, the Rochester area, and I've coined this term that I call Pennsylvania wrestling brain, because the standard here is so high that it, I think, kind of morphs what people view as like regular. Like, for example, cover the Fred Bell tournament in Grove City.
Right.
That's like one of the best regular season tournaments I've ever seen. But it's like not even the best tournament going on that weekend. Right. Or people talk about like Tool City and Meadville. Oh, that's not that good of a tournament. This is like a great tournament. We're New York guys. We've never found anything like that. So I call it Pennsylvania wrestling brain. This idea that, we're not competing at the super high level, when in reality you really are. And Faith Christian is perhaps the most extreme example of that the schedule you guys wrestle. Like you're only taking on teams that are legitimate. So maybe we can call that Allentown wrestling brain or Quakertown wrestling brain or wherever you guys have down there.
Where Bo Bassett calls it the PA pipeline. Just how many really tough guys just come out of this area, eastern side, especially the western side. You put that's like a dream team together. Penn State's still number one. Yep. They have a legacy up there. And it just keeps on going and going. Like we're gonna have Bo Bassett on the show tonight, after you and I are done. Talk about how much wrestling life has changed. I went up, I met his dad, shook his hand, shook Bo's hand. It's like, man, that guy's 11th grade. He's just signed a $5 million NIL deal.
And you never know it, right? Like I saw Bill had posted on Facebook, like congratulating Faith Christian, like good, all good combat. And, that mindset to me, like that says it all about, my limited experience of being around McCourt, being around Faith Christian. I've never really talked to those guys, but just seeing them at tournaments and seeing how the kids interact and the parents interact, it's good stuff, right? Like we want to make elite level wrestlers. We're not here to win team states. We're here to make men, and we're here to make elite level wrestlers who are prepared for life. We're not winning the tournament is a byproduct of what we're trying to do, at least from an outsider's perspective. Right. That's what it appears to be happening. And I think that's super special because there are a lot of opinions out there that are contradictory to that, and people who are just so focused on, this first place or whatever it is that they maybe lose sight of why we're doing it, or why wrestling, how wrestling, can prepare you for life. And when I wrestled, I certainly wasn't thinking about like the life lessons and stuff, but in hindsight, there's a reason that Dan Gable said, once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy, because it's true.
Yeah, I say that, I preach that all the time. You are spot on. Wrestling is a combat sport that challenges every nook and cranny of your sanity, of your heart, of your courage, of your manhood. There is no woe is me. You can't have any type of woe is me attitude, because nobody cares. And listen, you can't let the bad times keep you down, because my son was upset after his second match, and I was like, okay, Henry, nobody cares. It's done. You got the finals coming up here in an hour. Flush it, and let's go, brother. Let's
Yeah.
go. Before he knew he was going to have Jack Forrest, but still, the mindset's got to stay where it is. You gotta shrug that stuff off and get back in there.
Yeah, and that's a common trait amongst the best that I've seen is that mindset. And I'm glad that mindset training is becoming more widespread amongst youth wrestling, because I think that's really important. I found as a youth wrestler, or not even a youth wrestler, as a high school wrestler, if there was like a match that I was supposed to win, it would be like debilitating, because I would be so nervous about, like, am I going to blow it? Am I going to lose this match and not be like, and it would
everything mindset, and especially this sport, because your mind is constantly being challenged.
And it's just you.
Yeah, and it's everyone. It's information coming. That guy's third. He's fifth. He's seventh. And I keep trying to tell my son. I said, well, did he do that against you? Then who cares what number he is? But it's tough. They're young guys. They read the papers. They see the rankings. There's Instagram, and after my son. After the match, I'm like, listen, man, keep your head up. Jack Forrest, he's like the best in his weight class. The guy's an animal. And then like an hour later, he gets clipped in the fireman's carry, that's all over Flow.
Yeah.
All right, Dad, it can't get any worse than that. I just got clipped on Flow with Jack Forrest. Like, you're immortalized. That's any news is good news, right? Any press is good press.
Yep, he's the man in the arena.
Yeah, so, hey, listen, Jeff, man. We're going to have you on more often, because we don't have that reach out there, to the west side of the state. Again, everyone that's listening for the first time or third, fifth time, this is Jeff Uveino from Erie Times. He is going to be our West Coast of Pennsylvania correspondent. Welcome aboard. I really appreciate you coming on here, Jeff. And
thank you so much for having me.
Our east side of the state before the big match, before the state tournament in Hershey hits. You got any dogs out there that are going to come over here and upset the
I'll tell you what. I mean, Chase Karen Bauer is no secret, obviously, but we've got some girls who are some hammers. We got some 9th grade girls who are legitimate state championship threats. Karen Bauer is our best chance in D10 to win states. After Karen Bauer, you got to watch out for some of these girls. Maybe that's what we can talk about next time, because they're coming. They're talented, and now that they got a platform, they're ready to go.
Jeff, we have to get into women's wrestling. We have not gotten there yet. We are going to do that in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm going to rally up my east side. You rally up your west side. We'll meet in the middle, and we'll get together again. Sound good, Jeff?
Sounds awesome, man.
All right, Jeff. Thanks for your time. Jeff Uveino from Erie Sports. Thank you, Jeff. We will be in touch with you in a couple weeks. And for our listeners, we'll be back soon to the National High School Wrestling Show.